Welcome everyone to this session, which is pensions and other essentials for parents in Ireland. And in this session, we're going to take a look at where pensions and financial services fit with other financial demands on parents. We'll discuss some of the barriers or worries that parents might have, how to overcome them, and hopefully give you some practical steps that any parent can take to improve and de-stress when it comes to their financial position. And I know pensions can seem very daunting, so we want this session to show you that it doesn't need to be like that. Let me introduce myself. My name is Jill Holtz. I'm a mum of two teens and also the co-founder of mykidstime.com, an information website for parents. And we've been talking to parents recently about their thoughts on pensions and financial well-being. So let me introduce you now to my two other panelists. First of all, Claire Louise Murphy, who has over 15 years experience in life, pensions and investments, and is the Senior Propositions Consultant for corporate and self-directed pensions at Viva. Hi, Claire Louise.
Hi, Jill. Thanks for having me.
Then we have Blonnie Henderson. Have I pronounced your name correctly, Blonnie?
Yeah, you have.
Blonnie is financial advisor at MoneyCube and has over 12 years experience in the life, pensions and investments industry. So I'm really delighted to have these two wonderful experts here today. So to get the conversation started, I think it's fair to say that modern parenting has really changed in the last while, and in particular in the last 12 to 18 months.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
So where do you see kind of the big changes that maybe people are reflecting on? I'll start with you, Blonnie.
Yeah, I think as a parent myself, and particularly I suppose the changes that COVID has brought to light, we've all had pressures, juggling work-life balance, and some good things have come out of it, being at home more, but that has also brought challenges too, with children at home at the same time. And I know many parents now are probably experienced that their children are at home again with school closures. So yeah, the home and work lines have been blurred. But I suppose one of the big things that maybe has come up for parents who maybe have had reduced or paused income has been, how would I support my family if this wasn't a national pandemic and there wasn't support available, like, pausing mortgage payments or, getting kind of some help from social welfare. And even for those people that maybe their pay wasn't affected, I think what came to life for them was, how grateful they were that they weren't in a situation that they maybe had to sacrifice or think about how they were going to sustain their living and their family. And it puts these questions in your head. How would I cope if my income had stopped or I wasn't there to provide? Or when I do reach retirement age, how am I going to support myself? So yeah, I think these questions have come up.
I think as well in, that pensions in these particular situations, they might take a little bit of a back burner. People are, especially in the pandemic, people at home, their pension was probably the last thing on their mind. They were coping with a new way of living. And it's obviously completely fair enough. And each case and each family dynamic is different to the next, but I think just pensions are important at all times, and it's just an awareness of that and kind of getting a better understanding or more awareness of how paying into your pension now as a parent or as part of your family dynamic will benefit you in the future, so it's just taking a look at that. It may seem overwhelming, but while you're looking at your mortgage or your, where you work or what your current financial situation is, like, the pension should definitely be part of that conversation that you're either having at home or having with somebody that's going to give you advice.
I think what's interesting as well, a lot of people might have even been thinking of, well, either they lost their job, obviously, or even thinking, am I in the job that I really want to be in, because it made everything be reassessed. And then, as you say, I think it's really important that pensions are always part of your kind of mindset and you're thinking about it. But I don't think that's the case with many parents, and often they almost devolve that responsibility to work. If they are in work and they have a work pension, it's not really something that we discuss very much or think about. And when we were doing the feedback survey with parents and asking them how often they review, it was only about half of parents that reviewed their pension arrangements regularly. And there was a lot of feedback about kind of financial demands. So, like, that's one of the tricky things, when you're a parent, there's a lot of demands on your finances. There's a lot of bills to be paid for, and what's the average cost of raising a child? It's like hundreds of thousands or something, isn't it?
Extracurriculars and
so where do you think pensions fit in with those other financial demands? How do you do that juggle? How should you think about that? Have you any
I
thoughts on that?
think, yeah, like, and I fully agree that, pensions traditionally, I think, take a back burner with everybody. And can seem overwhelming, and definitely even how often people engage with their pensions, as you just say. Like, if you have pension provision, and we done a bit of research in the market, and only between kind of 11 and 12% of people that are part of a company pension actually go online to see what they're invested in, and the only time that they may look at their pension is when they're getting their annual statement, and that's if they have a pension in place. What I would say is that pensions are probably a lot more flexible and affordable than people believe. And I think that's where we need to kind of break down those barriers and the awareness piece. Like, flexibility became apparent, with COVID and people being at home as well, or if they've lost their job, or, or were on a reduced payment, whatever the situation is. Like, your pension is flexible enough that you can, make it paid up for a period of time, take a premium holiday, take a pause on your pension as well, to allow you a bit of breathing space, as well. From the affordability side, I would say, like, pay the minimum even into your pension, just to continue saving. But that minimum actually might be more affordable than you think. Like, as a 20% taxpayer, for example, if you were paying €100 a month into your pension, you're actually only having to contribute €80. And if you're a 40% taxpayer, you only have to contribute €60. So, like, if you try and think of it in those terms, could you afford €60 a month? I think most people would say yes, they could, because, like, what else are you spending the €60 on, and I just think it's more affordable than people actually believe. There's plenty of information out there, more so now than there probably was years ago, on all the pension providers' websites. They're much more jargon free than they were years ago. I think it's just taking that leap of actually going and doing a little bit of research, or even actually finding out about your own pension situation. If you're in a job, or your previous jobs, lots of people actually have pensions if they had an employment elsewhere that they're not aware of. And again, that's just about kind of seeing, okay, I may want to save in a pension. What is my real situation? What benefits do I already have coming to me? And that's not even including the state pension. So I think at a starting point, people, to do their little bit of research for their own situation, and then try and think about what it is that they want from that pension in the future.
just to highlight there, there's a lot of movement in the employment market at the moment. Like Jill said, people have had time to digest, oh, this isn't what I want. So we are seeing a lot of people are moving jobs over the last few months. And what we would say is, you probably have left it behind a pension somewhere. You do have a choice to leave it where it is, or take that into your control. We do have a session, so on the website, on the Pensions Awareness Week website. So there will be a session on changing jobs and what to do with your pension. So that'll be covered off in another session.
Yeah. And then a lot of feedback that we got from parents was about the impact of taking a career break. Probably the majority of that was women. They're the ones that tend to take the most parental leave, and kind of not really sure what that impact was, what they should do about it. Have you got any advice there, Bonnie and Claire Louise?
Yeah, and again, this is something that comes up, and yes, like women for their, if it's not a career break, it may be their maternity leave as well, for some people, you know. So again, if you're taking a career break, you know, like obviously everybody's circumstance is different, but again, you can put a pause on your retirement, or if you know, if you're taking a career break, but you may have an income from somewhere else, you know, I would say if you can try again to just reduce your retirement savings down to the minimum, just to keep them going, and to keep you kind of like from having a break, or you can take you know, a holiday from paying the premium in, if that's what suits you. Now, at the end of when you are retiring, and there will be a calculation done on tax credits, you know, that you've paid out in order to get the full state pension. And if you're taking a career break, if it's that you're at home with your children, there is a tax credit. It's a home cares scheme where you can build up your tax credits up to 20 years, for children under 12 years of age. So if you've had a few children, you can build up to 20 years of tax credits, and that will be offset against your calculation. So in theory, what it is it's like you've worked those 20 years for the state
Which you
pension.
have.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. For the state pension, you know, and that wasn't always available, you know. So it's great that we are moving on, you know, and trying to support people in their different career choices, or their pension payments, you know, that they're not being left behind, or kind of, I suppose, you know, yeah, that people aren't being penalized, you know, because they've chosen to take the career break, or perhaps are at home with children, you know. So it's great that that support is there, and because the state pension is obviously one of the pillars of your retirement, and it's a very important part of your retirement planning. It is one of your incomes, you know, and actually it's probably the building block that people should build on, for the retirement, whatever income they want to settle on in retirement or would like. You know, the first building block is the state pension.
And I suppose that kind of brings us to then benchmark. And so if you're kind of deciding, you know, what do I need in retirement? I suppose your starter point is like, okay, I have 12,700 per annum, which is the state pension. Okay, how much more am I going to need to sustain a lifestyle in retirement? And you know, that's kind of your benchmark, or how you set your goal for you know, how much you want to be paid in retirement.
And I heard a really interesting thing last year, which was really around the fact that sometimes people think you have to be on the same income now as you have now. But actually, to think of it more as, well, I'm not probably going to have a mortgage because we'll have paid that down by the time we retire. The kids will be away financially independent. This is our wishes anyway. So actually, and then if you think about what your vision for retirement is, it isn't necessarily that you need exactly the same amount of money now. And then, as you say, the starting point of the state pension, and then looking at the difference. So I think sometimes people, I don't know whether people, again, I just think there's a lot of lack of understanding about how to work these things out.
Yeah.
So just to finish off on the career break thing, I thought that was really interesting about that tax kind of credit. I wasn't aware of that. Blondie, if someone's either considering to be going a career break or is on one, is there any other practical things they should be doing about their pension arrangements?
Yeah, it's just a case of, I suppose we do have another session on maternity leave,
Yeah.
which we talk about this in detail. So I'd recommend anyone interested in that having a listen. But it's just, again, assess, you know, you know, your terms and conditions of your employment, in terms of, you know, pension or payment, while you're doing those things. And then the other thing is, you know, have you got a pension, a personal pension that you've set up yourself? You know, you can reduce, pause, decrease, reduce or pause this. You know, maybe if you're not being paid by your employer and not going into their pension scheme, maybe you still you have still a bit of money, you could put that into a pension yourself while you're off, if that is a concern for you and you feel like you've spare cash there to do it. So have a listen to the maternity session, and it'll cover that information in more detail.
Yeah, it's great that there's a separate section on that.
Yeah.
Another thing that came up a lot was if they, when to start a pension. So if they haven't been fortunate enough to kind of, get going in their 20s when they first started working, is it too late to start? What would you say to that?
I would say it's never too late, and I genuinely mean that. Even if you've left it, 30 years to start a pension, there are benefits of it. You get a quarter of the benefits tax free, up to a lifetime allowance of €200,000. The older you get, the more the more tax efficient it becomes. You also can save, like it grows tax free as well. So if you're thinking, oh, it's too late, I'm just going to save in the bank, you should also consider that your pension pot grows tax free, whereas you will pay tax if you're on any of the deposits or anything like in the financial institutions, and you could be paying tax of 33% on that. On the way out as well, then that as I said, you get the 25% tax free, and then you have a really good choice of, like, you can continue to invest or you can go down the annuity route and take an income. So I would say it is never, never too late. Again, it's something that, like, nobody likes to think of retirement in their 20s or 30s or anything like that. It's like it always seems so far away. What I would say to you is, though, as soon as you can, I would start a pension, because obviously the longer you can leave it there invested, like any of the other savings and investments, the more likely it is. Well, obviously your pot will be bigger, but the more likely it is to earn some growth on that. So it's never too late, but start as soon as you can as well. And that's probably a conversation that parents as well could have with their children, because I know, like, certainly I worked in the bank years ago, and I left before the 2 years. So I was offered the choice that I could get the premiums that I had paid back in a tax lump sum, and I was 22 years of age and going off on holiday. So of course I took it, and not thinking that, even though it was years ago, that could have actually been worth something more now, had I left it to just accumulate with the bank. And I think as well, like, people in their 20s and they're starting out the careers, getting a salary is probably the most important thing to them, and they're not thinking about retirement because it's so foreign to them, it's so many years away. But just even having that conversation of, actually, if you start saving now your little bit, it's amazing the growth and the pot that you could have at retirement. People are living longer, so yeah, like, save for yourself. It's for your future, and for you to have the best retirement available to you.
Yeah. I think as well, people have, they have more dreams about retirement, more goals about retirement now, and kind of, dreams to kind of retire early and travel or take up certain hobbies, or so we
I
we
think they've
certainly,
really changed, haven't they, since our parents' generation, haven't they?
yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And people are living longer, and people are traveling more, definitely, on kind of more far-flung destinations as well. And you're right, Jill, as you were saying earlier on about people thinking that, if they're earning, say, €30,000 a year, that they have to be earning that 30, that their income in retirement has to be 30,000. But in reality, it doesn't, because people are thinking about their now situations as opposed to the future. And as you say, like, hopefully there'll be mortgages, that they'll be mortgage free, the children won't be there, possibly downsizing a house, and there'll be more money available. But, like, the aim should be for about 50% of your income, and probably at the highest. So, if you wanted an income of 20,000, say, even in retirement, you wanted that a year, don't forget that, actually, okay, it's 20,000, so I have the state pension to offset against that. So in reality, what I'm saving for is to have an income of, what I will be paying for is that's the difference between the 20,000 and the state pension, the seven and odd €1,000, which may seem like a much more attractive plan than, oh God, I have to save for 40,000 or I have to save for 20,000. You're actually only having to save for 7,000, and that becomes more affordable, obviously, as life changes and your financial obligations hopefully wither away, whether that's, as I said, a mortgage or children moving on, or even personal loans, cars, whatever it may be.
So, Bonnie, you mentioned at the start of our conversation when we were talking about how things have changed for people, and that maybe there was a bit of a reflection on, have I other things in place? So we've kind of covered pensions, but the session is pensions and other essentials. So, talk a little bit to our audience about what else they could really be thinking about or should be thinking about.
Yeah, of course. So I think, like, as I said, one of the two questions that came to my mind during COVID was, God, what if I'm not here, for my children, and also what if I couldn't earn a living to sustain my family? So there are a couple of questions, and it even brings a story to mind. Like, so my dad was self-employed tradesman, carpenter, and there was four of us, and he relied on his physical well-being to be able to sustain his family. Now, thankfully, he never got sick, or he was never, physically disabled from doing work. But what if he had been? And it's, some people that situation happens to, but there is protection that you can buy to protect your earnings in case you are in a situation where you can't work as a result of injury or illness, and you have to put something in place so that you can be paid while you can't work. And there are plans out there to protect you from that, called income protection. So that is something that you could look at maybe with the likes of ourselves at MoneyCube, and something certainly that Aviva can provide in those times of need. And there's support services available as well when you are not able to work as a result of injury or illness. And I suppose the other big thing is, now I have children, I'm responsible for these people until they are, 18, I suppose, not anymore, but probably 23 and out of full-time education. So they rely on me. And the big question is then, what happens if I'm not here? So you want to leave, some money just in case, for the likes of, living, education. You still want your children to be able to fulfill maybe the dreams and goals that you maybe wanted them to be able to achieve when you were here. So that brings us to the question of life cover. And life cover, it's relatively cheap if you're somebody who's 20s, 30s, 40s, and you're in reasonably good health. It's not going to be a huge cost for you. Also, there is huge flexibility around the type of cover. So I suppose the recent kind of change in the market, if we've seen a policy where you can have a larger amount of cover when your children are young, and this will decrease as you and your children get older, because the need for that big pot of money if you were to pass away reduces. So that the cost of that can be spread, which actually is even making life insurance cover cheaper now. So when we have the cover on mortgages, because if we go, we certainly want the mortgage to be covered, but if we go, we want our children to have something to have there as well. A morbid thought, but it's very realistic.
I know, and actually, we wrote an article for my kids' time a couple of years back, and it was 8 things to put in place. Because I think it's not a nice situation to think about, but you do have to be practical about that and put life cover in place, etc. But I think maybe people have a perception that once they buy the life cover for the mortgage, say that's them, they can't switch. That's not the case, is it, Claire Louise?
No, they can say, there's cover available with every life provider or mortgage provider, and independently as well. And you can certainly switch. Now, it does mean having to fill in all those forms that everybody hates filling in again. But yeah, absolutely, you can switch, and there's lots of availability out there. And what I would say as well about the life cover is to also think that if your situation is that there's 2 parents in the household, and say if one of the parents works at home, to consider, just to make sure that they have life cover as well. And I take that back to my own brother, who would kill me for telling this story, but his wife was taking care of the children, working from home, and he was working in a job. And when they were talking about life cover, he was not that he wasn't covering her, but I think he felt her cover wasn't as important in a sense as his. And I said to him, like, but Tom, if you know, if Eleanor passed away, who's going to look after the children there? You know, like if you had to pay for a creche or childminder, which are the prices are very high, who is going to pay for that if you want to continue to work? You know, and that's part of covering. Yes, it's for our children and leaving something for them as well, but it's also making sure that the people that are working from home are protected as well. You know, so it's very important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very good point. And I mean, in general, then, are there any other kind of things that parents with financially dependent children, you know, should be thinking about regarding their financial well-being? Is it going back to what you both articulated, which is really researching and understanding your current position, where you want to get to, setting goals, you know,
Yeah.
paying at least a bit into
Yeah.
I think the first thing is set yourself one goal and just, you know, talk to somebody who is an expert. It could be ourselves at MoneyCube, or it could be another, you know, person who can give you advice on your financial well-being. Just get some information from them, and there's not going to be an immediate obligation. You know, you'll have time to let that sink in and consider, you know, I actually can, you know, afford this bit of money every month, and then I just won't be worrying about these things anymore. Because I think we all have this little thing at the back of our heads, like, I really should do that. I really should get life cover. I really need to put a pension in place, and it's niggle, niggle, niggle. So just, you know, talk to somebody, and they are the experts. They're going to make you realize how straightforward it is, and it doesn't have to be overnight. You don't have to do this. Talk to someone today, do this tomorrow. These can be gradual things that you decide, no, I actually can put the next thing in place. But it's going to mean greater financial well-being and reduce any stress that you have kind of about, you know, unforeseen situations occurring.
Claire Louise, do you have any other thing to add to
Yeah,
that?
I would just say as well to try and remember, you know, that again, when people are thinking of their current situations, you know, they're thinking of their salary now and their financial obligations, and just to try and think of it as well, then when you're going for that advice, to remember that, like, you know, it is a bit of a tiered effect, you know, as children grow up and move on and you're not paying for them, you might have more money for your pension, or you might have more money for like whatever it is, as Blonde was saying, the hobbies that you want to do. So just to try and think of it that, like, you won't always have the high financial payouts that you have now, or, you know, deductions coming out of your salary, that they will tear off the kind of closer you get to either retirement, or your children move out, or your mortgage is paid off. So there will be more money available to you in the future, to either to do what you want with it, or to invest in your pension, or that holiday that everybody wants to go on.
Thank you both. So hopefully this session has been informative and has at least allowed you to think that this doesn't need to be complicated. There are things you can do to take full advantage of your pension for yourself and your family, and that we encourage you to take an action to review your pension position and set goals for what you want to do to improve or update those retirement arrangements. So I want to say a big thanks to my expert fellow panelists, Blonnie and Claire Louise, and also to remind you to go to the Pensions Awareness Week website, that's pensionsawarenessweek.ie, for more information. Read the blog, look at the many more sessions that are taking place, including starting a pension, the one that we mentioned, impact of maternity leave, and investing your pension. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks, Jill. Thanks, everybody.
Lovely to be here.